In the late 1930s, the British began the UV class of small patrol and training submarines. These were meant as more capable supplements to the older S class of comparable size. For their size and role, they were pretty good, even if riveted and using saddle tanks rather than fully double-hulled or single-hulled. It would also limit them to just one reload per tube. It also meant they would have a short range, which was okay when used for training. It also mostly limited their combat usage to the North Sea and the relatively confined waters of the Mediterranean. If you've paid attention, you realize this was more a curse than a blessing. Yes, they made many raids and headlines in the Mediterranean, but they also suffered a very high loss rate. At the risk of being tastelessly blunt, fame is pretty useless to a dead person. Their small size meant many could be built, which in turn led to several subclasses. The three Batch 1s were naturally the smallest and had two non-reloadable external tubes in their bow hump. The Batch 2s were larger and a little slower when submerged, but carried more fuel. The Batch 3As, 3Bs, and 3Cs were a little larger, lost the bow hump, and could carry mines. The Batch 4, or V class, was heavier, longer, and were welded. Originally, the Batch 3s were just given numbers before later the survivors were given names. With so many built and one of their primary roles being training, they were very often loaned, leased, or sold to Allied free navies. This was vital in helping these shattered navies rebuild their force. While under construction, two were handed over to the Polish Navy, one of the Batch 2s and one of the Batch 3Bs. The 630 surfaced and 730 submerged ton Urchin was started December 9, 1939, and completed January 19, 1941, as the Polish Sokol. The 630 surfaced and 732 submerged ton P-52 was started December 30th, 1941, and was completed December 16th, 1942, as the Polish Dzik. Yes, almost 2 years after Sokol. Main armament was four bow-mounted 21-inch torpedo tubes, each with a reload. Dzik could carry 6 mines. One 3-inch deck gun was fitted. Propulsion on the surface was provided by two diesel engines that provided 5,000 horsepower to recharge the batteries and run the two propellers up to 19 knots. While submerged, they ran on batteries that powered the motors, which provided 1,000 horsepower for a top speed of 9 knots. Sokol was fitted with Types 286 and Type 129 radar and Type 138 sonar. Dzik was fitted with Type 291 and Type 129 radar and Type 138 sonar. Test diving depth was 60 meters. Sokol entered service at the end of January 1941 and began training around the British Isles until late March. From April until the end of August, she patrolled the Bay of Biscay. In September, she transferred to Malta, covering the halberd convoy along the way. From October 1941 through the end of March 1942, she operated out of Malta and patrolled the central Mediterranean, trying to attack enemy convoys between Africa and Italy and any warships she could find. Unfortunately, she was damaged at Malta in an air raid on March 26th, badly enough that she had to sail back to England for repairs, arriving at the beginning of July. Repairs and training would keep her in British waters until mid-December 1942. From mid-December 1942 through mid-February 1943, she supported a Russia convoy and, now joined by Dzik, patrolled around Norway before returning to England for a refit. In late March, they departed England and headed back to Malta to patrol the central Mediterranean. In mid-October 1943, they transferred to the eastern Mediterranean and patrolled around Greece until the end of February 1944. Arriving back at England in late March 1944, They went in for a refit and spent the rest of the war training in British home waters. Post-war, they were returned to the Royal Navy.